Sudan's ruling military council and opposition reach an agreement. LNA Forces Commander Haftar is in Cairo for regional security talks. And doctor and former Ebola patient calls for greater global attention of the disease in DR Congo. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi, also coming up in the programme. Local Kenyan university uses insects for sustainable foods and feeds. And Tanzania in a do-or-die match against Kenya in the African Nations Championship qualifiers. Sudan's ruling generals and protest leaders have reached an agreement on the constitutional declaration. It paves the way for a transition to civilian rule. The document is complementary to a power-sharing deal that was signed on July the 17th. The deal aims to form a joint civilian-military ruling body which will oversee the formation of a transitional civilian government and parliament to govern for a 3-year transitional period. CGTN's Mohammed Abu Bakr has more.
The agreement by Sudan's ruling generals and protest leaders comes after prolonged negotiations between the country's military council and leaders of the protest movement, which toppled veteran leader Omar al-Bashir in April.
I am announcing to the Sudanese, African and international public opinion that the two delegations have successfully agreed on the Constitution Declaration.
Crowds of Sudanese people outside the hall broke out in celebration after the announcement. The jubilant crowd waved the Sudanese flag while chanting, and women were ululating as cars driving honked their car horns.
We hope everyone will work together to get the country out of the hardships that it had entered into, and we also hope that those who had caused the deaths of our brothers will be immediately held accountable.
Majority of the people expressed emotions of happiness, saying that the agreement has paved way to good leadership.
The agreement that has been reached today is a chance for a new beginning to take Sudan into the place it deserves, and it should open the door to the modern civilian future of Sudan that we have been looking for.
The African Union mediator in Sudan says that meetings will be held to work out the technical details of the deal and discuss the formal signing ceremony. The protest movement has long blamed the irregulars of the powerful RSF for the deadly violence against demonstrators. Mohammed Abu Bakr, CGTN.
Well, the agreement made by the Sudanese ruling military council and main opposition coalition on the formation of a transitional civilian government has been marred by continued killings of activists. Yasser Hakim looks at whether the military is divided over surrendering leadership to a civilian authority.
As the political forces are close to an historic deal, the violence against demonstrators had threatened to destroy the peace process. The opposition has held the military council responsible for the safety of the demonstrators.
It was a plan to break up the talks between the military council and the opposition, especially when they felt a deal is imminent. But the military council announced they have arrested 9 officers from the task forces because of the violence at Al-Biyad city.
The military council has announced that the head of security sector and the head of the special task force in North Kordofan state will be punished for failing to avert the attacks which killed 8 and injured 64 demonstrators last week. However, some experts fear the attacks could lead to divisions within the armed forces.
There are leaders in the army who have been loyal to Omar al-Bashir and are trying to sabotage the transition to civilian rule taken by the military council. This threatens to divide the army into conflicting groups. The problem is that the ones leading the dissent within the army are high-ranked, powerful officers and not soldiers.
The military council has already faced a failed coup attempt last month, adding more fears of dissent within the armed forces. The perpetrators have not been identified yet. Observers believe the military council should work hard on dealing with these groups to ensure the armed forces are intact and to ensure the stability and security of Sudan. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
To Libya now, and Commander of the Libyan National Army Forces, Khalifa Haftar, is in Cairo to continue talks about logistical cooperation with Egypt. Haftar's advancement to control Tripoli has significantly slowed down after Turkish support to the UN-backed government of national accord. Well, the LNA leader is also seeking more support from Cairo's Gulf allies as he continues the battle over the Libyan capital. Here's Adel El Marouki with more.
Haftar returns to Cairo seeking more support as the battle over Tripoli intensifies. It's his third visit to the Egyptian capital since he declared a military campaign against the Islamist militias which support his rival Faiz al-Sarraj, the head of the UN-backed government of national accord.
The meeting follows a crucial declaration from the UN envoy exposing al-Sarraj's government hosting to internationally wanted terrorists. It also follows reports of Turkish direct involvement in Libya. Both are issues that concerns Egyptian national security. Haftar fears that recent developments could inflict more violence and thus came for support.
Turkey's support is not hidden and has been announced by Faiz al-Sarraj. He says it's self-defense as other regional powers support Haftar, but the Turkish support has somewhat balanced the power in Libya.
For 4 months, the battle has been ongoing without any remarkable advancement from one party over the other. The civil war, however, appears to be getting more violent.
There's been a tactical development in the war between the rival governments. Fighting in Tripoli moved from the center of the capital to the outskirts as both forces target the supply lines for the other.
Haftar's delegation have been scheduled to meet Egyptian intelligence and military officials. Cairo is one of the region's biggest supporters to the LNA forces' war against the militias. The Libyan commander wants Egypt's help to get more support regionally and internationally by working to lift the arms embargo.
Haftar is also expected to get Cairo's insights over the UN-proposed ceasefire this month. Muslims will be celebrating Eid al-Adha, the biggest Islamic feast, and the Libya envoy Ghassan Salama wants to make use of that opportunity to reach longer truce. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Researchers in Uganda are set to carry out a second experimental Ebola vaccine that will be deployed in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Uganda Virus Research Institute says the human trials will involve the use of the Janssen Ebola vaccine, which will be tested on about 800 people. The outbreak has killed more than 1,800 people in DR Congo. The heightened insecurity, community resistance for help, and the shortage of funds have compromised the effectiveness of the experimental Merck vaccine in the DRC. CGTN's Michael Beleke has that report.
The trial, supported by Uganda's Ministry of Health, Doctors Without Borders, and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, will be the largest yet conducted for this vaccine. The lead researcher at Uganda's Virus Research Institute says the vaccine is a mix of different Ebola strains and the Marburg fever.
Still an investigational vaccine, It's not yet licensed, but it's one of those vaccines that have shown a lot of promise in animal studies, but also in other trials that have been conducted. This vaccine has been tested in about 6,000 individuals before.
During the trials, volunteers from Uganda will be given 2 doses, one shot that has Ebola genetically produced in the lab, and a second shot with a booster dose of vaccine that protects against Ebola. The aim is to find out the immune response of the vaccine, but also gather more information about its safety. In July, the UN World Health Organization declared the Ebola epidemic an international health emergency, and researchers hope this trial vaccine will be used to contain the deadly virus raging on into its second year. Uganda has been carrying out emergency vaccinations of frontline health workers against Ebola in the high-risk districts neighboring the DR Congo. Michael Baleke, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Well, continuing with the Ebola situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo, it's now 1 year since the outbreak was reported in eastern Congo, and 2 more cases have been reported in the densely populated city of Goma. This is causing concern in neighbouring Rwanda. The Ebola response coordinator of the DRC, however, insists that closing borders is not a wise move. Here's more.
The Democratic Republic of Congo marked a year since Ebola made a landfall in the eastern North Kivu and Ituri provinces. And with it, more bad news for the eastern big city of Goma, which also happens to be the capital of North Kivu. 2 more cases were reported. This time, the wife and child of a man who died of Ebola are the latest on the growing list of Ebola infections.
I believe that measures are being taken to ensure that the infection is truly contained in the home where this outbreak occurred. The victim's wife and child are now hospitalized at the Ebola treatment center in Goma, and their health is no longer a concern.
The closure and reopening of a shared border by Rwanda has pushed up the stakes in the region, even as the man in charge of combating Ebola in DRC warns against the move.
The way people cross borders does not guarantee the best control yet. We need to strengthen our control at the border post we just visited. Also, see what Rwanda is doing on the other side and modernize the way we control people who cross the border into Rwanda.
Goma is a jewel city of eastern DRC. It lies adjacent to Rwanda's Gisenyi city. It is also a hub of the region, with residents sharing ethnic, economic and social ties with their Rwandese counterparts. People of the 2 cities depend entirely on the state of open borders. Some work, some have homes and even place their children in schools on either side of the border. The city has been the center of political and historical events that have shaped the 2 nations. The genocide in Rwanda, the First and Second Congo Wars, together with the deadly cholera outbreak, were felt reverberated in the 2 nations. Now, a deadly viral outbreak is the latest potent threat to the 2 countries, and Goma sits at the center of this.
One of the recommendations is to ask neighboring countries not to close their borders so as to hinder the movement of people and goods, and that was clear. I think our minister and government reacted, and immediately after, the border was reopened.
Although largely peaceful, Goma is the latest victim of Ebola, which has been riding on instability in eastern DRC. Militia action, a population that doesn't trust foreign medical teams, and a poor infrastructure have been a catalyst of the rapid spread of Ebola in the region.
The biggest problem is insecurity. Those responsible for the country's security will be part of this multi-sectoral committee. So, by putting all our energies together, there will be a synergy to quickly stop this epidemic.
Kampala is also on the edge, as Ebola spreads in Ituri province, which shares a border with Uganda. The Ebola situation in eastern Congo is the 2nd worst, after the 2014-2016 case in West Africa, in which 11,000 people died. Mohamed Abubakar, CGTN.
We are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including local Kenyan university uses insects for sustainable foods and feeds. Just like riding a bike, Egyptians cycle on the Nile.
As conflict, poverty and corruption consume many African countries, their impacts continue to be felt far and wide. Since 2014, more than 1.8 million refugees and migrants have arrived on European shores. While some seek refuge, others hope for opportunities. Sicily is on the front line of Italy's migrant crisis. With tensions growing, we'll discover what the reality is like for those starting a new life and how the locals feel about having to share their home.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now to a food revolution, a call for sustainable food options that are both healthy to the body and to the environment. In Kenya, a university is using insects to create human food and animal feed for a sustainable future.
Professor Monica Yeko has for 18 years championed the use of insects for food and feed and has been working to prove the value of insects as alternative protein options to reduce the existing access limitations created by cost for man and animals.
It was at the time of peak of drought, and there were a lot of children dying of malnutrition and those early 90s.
With the support of the World Bank, the project hosted at the Jaramogi Oginga Odinga University in Kisumu is proving the viability of insects for food and feed, using the black soldier fly as the ideal protein option for animal feed, while crickets are being reared for financial gain and to create protein variations for man.
The lifespan of this cricket is around 3 to 4 months, within which you're able to harvest. So it means if a farmer has to do this, then you're sure of at least harvesting 3 times in a year. So if you look at space, we are using very little space. If you look at time duration to recoup your money, then you can be able to see. Tell me any livestock industry that you're going to rear within 3 months. You already have your returns.
However, one of the main challenges that remain are the social attitudes. But a daring taste of the dried insect proves safe and quite tasty. It's actually nice. However, the project goes beyond blind exploration.
When I was picking up this area called entomophagy, I was not looking at it as a project to mitigate climate change. Mine was food for the future.
After getting the dried ones, we put them in the blender.
And there are various ways this naturally unsightly creature can be presented to ensure that public perception is swayed, and the simplest way, as sweet treats.
Insects' amino acid, the protein from the insect is so good that we shall not have the problem of the climate change. We cannot produce maize and beans, or we cannot keep poultry and things like that. You produce one insect and you get almost all the amino proteins you need. You get almost all the minerals you need and all the vitamins you need, and the other physical chemicals of the insects.
With a growing demand for sustainable and nutritional options, science is exploring nature to present nutritive ideal meat alternatives, and in this case, though not appealing to the eye at first, with value addition options adopted, the insect could be on the menu in a few years. Beryl Oro, CGTN, Kisumu, Kenya.
Let's now head over to Egypt, where residents can now ride their bicycles on the River Nile, and that's without stopping at the water's edge. Let's now take a look at this incredible project.
Sitting in the middle of the water, Maab Ahmed moves the pedals to create the force that throttles her forward as she cycles on a water bicycle. The bicycle is specially fitted with floaters so it can be used on water.
I wanted to start something totally new. Everyone was opening up food businesses, but I wanted to be different. I started something that I enjoy doing.
Cycling brings Maab happiness, and she wanted to share her happiness with fellow Egyptians. Maab says she thought of the project when she learned that people in Italy were using water bikes. While the activity looks just like riding an ordinary bike, It's not quite like cycling on the ground.
It's actually quite different. You can cycle and still manage to take selfies and stand while doing it.
Maab says coming up with the project was not a walk in the park. She encountered many challenges on the way, but still managed to stand strong.
Initially, I faced a lot of obstacles. The amount of trash floating on the Nile made it difficult for my customers to enjoy water cycling. Eventually, I managed to overcome all this.
The business charges $6 for half an hour of cycling in the water. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
We've got all the sports news coming up for you after the break, including Tanzania in a duel